let's talk about NAC, or Network Access Control. So this is a solution or secure solution that enforces policies to restrict access to a network. And we only ensures that authorized devices and users are allowed to enter our network. Alright, so this is our network topology. We're gonna talk about how this client here can access the network. Alright, now as soon as he enabled its interface as 802.1x, it will send what we call the IP overland. Okay, so this is a protocol that supports 802.1x to proceed with authentication, and the switches will respond back, provide your identity, and the user will provide its identity. Let's say he has a username Bob and a password, let's say pass123. So this is his username and password, its identity, and this will be received by the switch and forwarded to the radio server. Now the radio server, like what I mentioned, it can check its local database, or it can match those user information to an AD or those accounts in AD. So what it will do is it will do radius challenge, and assuming that Bob and its passwords are valid, these are validated by our radio server, the username or the user, this PC, is now authenticated. Okay, take note, authenticated, not yet authorized. And how would you know it's authorized? Well, let's check first its authorization policy. You see, authorization policy is very important because this is the privilege level that we can provide to the user. Before we talk about the authorization policy, let's first provide a group to this user Bob. You see the AD, it has its account, okay, the username. It also knows that which group a user is a member of. Let's say Bob is a member of a group called employee. Okay, so Bob is an employee. So if we check our authorization policy, let's look at the first rule. First rule is if group, and when we say if group, this is the group of the user that is or that has been authenticated. So if Bob group is employee, we'll give him authorization profile emp VLAN. Now, how does it work? Now, take note, this interface has a default VLAN. It can also has a default access rule. So let's say the default VLAN of this interface, this E1 interface, is VLAN 1. So if it's not authorized, any user that connects to an interface is limited to accessing resources because they are just in VLAN 1. Okay, so it's still in VLAN 1, but after the radius challenges is completed and the switch received the radius accept with the authorization profile is mapped called EMP VLAN, what will happen is it's like the authentication server is instructing the switch, hey switch, can you please configure VLAN 100, because this is the VLAN 100 set to EMP VLAN profile. It's gonna ask, please configure EMP VLAN, which is VLAN 100, to this interface. This interface is the interface where user Bob is directly connected to. Now, if VLAN 100 is already configured in this interface dynamically, that means user Bob is not only authenticated but also authorized. And when you say authorized, this means that user Bob can now access the network. It can now send traffic to this VLAN 100, and this network is our server and application network. And since he is an employee, he can also send traffic to the internet. Alright, now let's talk about wireless connection using not 802.1x, because there are cases that we have guessed, or sometimes our laptop, our workstation has no 802.1x capability or is disabled. So to lessen the process what we can do is we can enable authentication and authorization via NAC without using 802.1x. So how does it work? So this is more common in wireless environment. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to create a new SSID. Now this new SSID that we're gonna create is not 802.1x enabled. So our new SSID will be, I will call this just guest. Okay, it's very common for a corporate office to give a temporary access to guests and partners. So I created an SSID called guest, and what happens here is there will be a dedicated SSID for guests. And let's say this is a guest user. Okay, this is a guest user. It can be PC, it can be mobile device. Now, this is how it works. When this PC or this mobile device connects to the network and then they see guest SSID, what will happen is they will try to connect guest. They thought they are connected. They thought they can access the internet, but no, they cannot. What happens is they are redirected to a page. Now, this page is what we called captive portal. Now, captive portal, it sounds cool, but it's no difference from a guest page. So basically, this is just a guest page where you see username and password field, and of course submit button. Now how it works is the guest will just enter its username and password and then click submit. And what will happen is they will get an access temporarily to the network. What network? Well, it's just a network connecting to the internet most of the time. You see this policy here, or this authorization profile, internet only, and deny traffic to other VLANs or other local networks. Now, maybe you're thinking, how can we get this username and password? Well, most of the time, if you are a guest or if you are a partner, the company may provide you a temporary username and password. Most of the time, this is limited, like few hours or maybe 1 day access. So in this example, let's first check the authorization policy. So in our authorization policy, assuming that this user, this temporary user and password are now validated, the user is now authenticated, it will now proceed to authorization. Now, based on the policy, if the group falls into a guest group, we'll give him guest DACL. And basically, it's an ACL that has been downloaded by the NAD from our radio server. So our ACL specifically for this user session, okay, because in wireless it's a little different. You don't map the authorization profile in an interface. You map it to a session. So in this wireless user session, we're mapping this internet only access control list, okay? And we are denying access to other local network. So if this is the guest user and he was able to access wireless network providing the temporary username and password, yep, he will be authorized and he can now access the internet. There you go. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make it a little different color wise, so he can access the wireless network, okay, and he can now send traffic or connect to the internet.